Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaino Phillips. I serve as the Vice Chair of the Punjab Promise Zone Authority Board. And I appreciate how you teed this up, Senator Baird, and I appreciate how you came and brought in the rear side to this. The reality is we are in dire need of a seismic change that's taking place within the neighborhood dynamics that we have in these communities. Ultimately, certain communities are just it's more resources, more financial backing to go ahead and get behind children. But when we look at communities like a Pontiac, a Detroit, Flint, Saginaw, these are just communities that just this cycle just does not exist. And it doesn't because of the fact that education is supposed to be a priority in everyone's household. But there's a lot of other dynamics that's happening inside these households that I think that we're just overlooking. You got things that are happening inside of some of the doors, inside of some of the walls of some of these homes that'll make your soul cringe, that some of these kids are dealing with. It makes it virtually impossible for them to focus on the educational dynamics that they need to go ahead and focus on to become successful in this particular world. That's why this conversation we have in here and this bill, why it is so important. As the state of Michigan, I appreciate to no end when the Promise Zone came into existence a multitude of years ago. It was something that was drastically and desperately needed to be able to go ahead and help children go ahead and kind of level out the playing field, to take some of these obstacles off the table on why kids cannot go on to be successful, especially financial barriers. But however, what's taken place since then has been a change in the climate, where you got these kids now that are growing up in households where they're forced to go ahead and take care of their 4 and 5 and 8-year-old little brothers and sisters. They got to get out of those households. The only way they're going to potentially have the opportunity to be successful. They can't stay into those home dynamics. But when we start talking about retention, what's taking place now is you have these kids that are trying to get away. And I mean away is not going to a college right next door, not going to the other side of the state. So if I'm in Pontiac, I want to go ahead and I do everything I need to do academically in the classroom to put myself in a position to go to a University of Michigan, a Western, a Grand Valley. But the reality is, with the Promise Zone as presently constructed, what takes place is if you have a kid who did everything they need to go ahead and do inside the classroom to go ahead and land a scholarship that will take care of the academic load, what happens is there's a housing component that's there and the room and board component. So now this kid, what's going to take place is the kid, and a lot of times we get really fooled too. A lot of times kids are applying for scholarships for that first year when they're coming out of high school as a senior. And so they might end up landing some other additional scholarships. That's going to wear out after the first semester. And then what happens when the second semester takes place? So if they go to Western, they go there and they try to say, well, I really need to get away. I appreciate this scholarship opportunity. I go there, but all of a sudden, that bill comes for the second semester. Now they just can't stay. And the thing about that we got to go ahead and get away from is we can't be happy with saying we got kids to college. We got to be happy with saying we got kids to college, we got them through college, and they went on to become productive, successful aspects of their communities. And so this is what this bill can potentially do. And that's why I thank every last one of you for even the consideration of understanding what kind of power you wield with us being able to have the potential to change this dynamic around. I am tired of I also am the president of a foundation. I'm inside of households on a regular basis, and I'm tired of going into court systems on a regular basis. I want us to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. Reactive is after the kid then found themselves in a situation where they feel like hope has been stripped from them. And this is what happens when you go to school. You think you're good for a year, and next thing you know, the carpet gets yanked off from underneath you, and now all of a sudden now, you're out here going back to what's familiar. It's what you see in these neighborhoods. We got to go ahead and provide another degree or another advantage point for these kids to be able to find their greatness. Don't take hope from a kid. Remember, we were all kids at one point in time, too. And I'm very sure some rode great for you because all of you are sitting in these senatorial seats. And that's what we want to go ahead and be able to do, is prepare the next group of kids that's going to eventually replace you and us.
And the church said amen. Thank you. Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator McMorrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both so much for being here. A question about, I see that the legislation allows for this funding to be used for on-campus housing. Are there any concerns from what you've seen that that might be limiting in some way if certain colleges or universities may not have on-campus housing available, or if that on-campus housing is maybe too expensive compared to an apartment in town? And have been any conversations about utilizing funds for those reasons?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because what's taking place is sometimes on some certain campus dynamics, certain campuses are starting to pick back up traffic again since COVID. And so there might not be as much free or on campus housing available. So if there is some type of leeway in this bill to be able to go ahead and give someone the opportunity to be able to go ahead and find housing that might be off campus, where we can go and take that funding to go and help them with their living arrangements. Absolutely. Because what's taking place, and just use this from an Oakland University standpoint, Oakland University has this whole thing that's in place. Wade McCree is a scholarship that gives kids the opportunity. I want to let you to get a full understanding of the challenge that we're facing.
And before you keep going, I'm going to welcome up Chuck Wilbur to join you all, because in the interest of time, we have probably about 6 or 7 minutes. So I'm going to have him introduce himself. He, in some ways, is the godfather of many of these Promise programs. And so as a technician, he can also chime in briefly on some of these components. So, but again, we have about 5 to 7 minutes total. So thank you.
I'll finish it. I'll make it real quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, in short, you got a kid that takes advantage, ends up doing what they need to do in the classroom. They end up getting something called a Wade McCree scholarship. Wade McCree pays for everything when it comes to the academic side. But what happens is they get up on campus, and all the money that we have in the world to go ahead and be able to support that kid, we can't do it, because the laws state that the only thing we can go ahead and do is just focus it specifically on the academic load. That's why this conversation and this bill is absolutely crucial. And I'm very sure you can echo that sentiment, can't you, Chuck?
Amen.
Yes.
Okay.